GamingBolt presents 15 games based on movies nobody asked for. We've all had those poor moments of judgment when it comes to video games, but no matter how much the internet hates you for playing Mass Effect Andromeda, No Man's Sky, or even Fallout 4, there's no way that they're as terrible as the worst video game adaptations of movies. In this special breed of awful, there are a fair number of games based on movies that no one could have possibly asked for. Let's look at 15 of them now. The Polar Express. Is it better or worse that you can beat the Polar Express in a few hours? Granted, it's not the worst licensed game of all time, and thankfully avoids many of the haunting CG humans of the film. But with numerous genres, bad voice work, and poor gameplay as a whole, the Polar Express just flopped with its execution. Also, who could have possibly have asked for this game? Shrek. Our favorite green ogre has had his share of terrible movies, but the sheer range of terrible games he's been in far outshine that. Where else do you look but at the beginning with the awful Xbox platformer developed by none other than DICE? We'd rattle off a bunch of descriptors on why this game is bad, but honestly, when some reviewers pointed out at the time how it's as interesting as being in a car crash, what more can you say? E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. This meandering, glitchy, and shitty game heavily contributed to the great video game crash of 1983. Of course, you could blame Atari for developing E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial within a few weeks to simply reap the holiday season profits. Despite great sales, a number of copies were returned, and then there were more cartridges than consoles to play the game on. Along with more or less killing Atari, excess E.T. cartridges had to be dumped in the desert. Such was their infamy. Ghostbusters 2016. The fact that such a horrible movie adaptation could exist in 2016 is, well, pretty par for the course actually. Taking place after the 2016 reboot and developed in 8 months, Ghostbusters is repetitive, uninspired, and just plain bad. You could appreciate the music for its nostalgia value, but that's like sitting through Tron Legacy for Daft Punk. It's just not worth it. Terminator Salvation. Terminator games are generally bad, but Terminator Salvation tries its darndest to offer something good with its graphics, music, and combat. However, you just can't escape the sheer repetition of it all, the lack of variety in enemies, awful AI, and missing online co-op. Terminator Salvation pretty much bombed in sales and caused its developer Grin to shut down as a result. Catwoman. In hindsight, it's kind of laughable. With how abysmal the Catwoman movie is, how can the game possibly be any worse? EA UK probably took this as a challenge and thus implemented a terrible camera, awful voice work, lame exploration, and a simplistic combat system. It's somewhat surprising that the Game Boy Advance version, which was not developed by EA, actually got decent reviews. The Golden Compass. Perhaps even stranger than The Golden Compass, which came out of nowhere with its star-studded cast to box office success despite below-average reviews, was the game. You name it and the game messed it up. Story, gameplay, mechanics, so on and so forth. The game apparently existed as a companion to the film since you wouldn't understand a lick of the story without watching it, or at least reading the book. Couple that with a heaping help of bugs, and this has rushed cash-in written all over it. The Karate Kid. Daniel-san would be ashamed of this game, and why not? The Karate Kid belongs to the ET school of shameless cash-ins. As a side-scrolling platformer beat-em-up, the Karate Kid is repetitive with unresponsive controls and some serious balancing issues, like the lack of continues. If it's game over, you actually have to start the game from the beginning. Also, who thought it was a good idea to collect letters in order to use the special moves? Battleship. As awkward as Rihanna playing a Marine was Battleship based on the 2012 movie based on the Naval Combat board game. Well, not really. The Xbox 360 and PS3 versions were actually first-person shooters with a bit of poorly implemented turn-based strategy. You could find that on the Wii, DS, and 3DS versions, but then you could also saw your foot off without anesthesia, so there's that. Harry Potter for Kinect. What's worse than a Harry Potter video game that's centered with gimmicky motion controls to appeal to the masses? Harry Potter for Kinect, which took several scenes from the movies and attempted to make them interesting with your traditional wavy hand gestures. Spoiler alert, it's pretty bad. What's more to say than thanks Warner Brothers. Spider-Man 3. Terrible, uninspired side quests? Idiotic catchphrases that are said again and again and again? Pathetic graphics and collision detection. You probably get the drift, but we'll keep going. Awful story, completely and utterly unlike many of the Spider-Man games that came before it, a humongous waste of time. That should be it for describing Spider-Man 3, but lest we forget, it also just plain sucks. Avatar. It's ironic that Ubisoft's Avatar is here because the company is bringing out a brand new title based on James Cameron's film, helmed by the Division developer Massive. The old Avatar is different though, arriving before the film and featuring numerous inconsistencies with the main story. Avatar had decent visuals, that's more or less for the good parts, and yet somehow it managed to make the Na'vi look bad. Overall, Avatar came across as boring and unfun, with lame controls and a story that made as much sense as Na'vi physiology. Aliens, Colonial Marines. Watch that one lone xenomorph shuffle up to you on two legs. Realize that Aliens, Colonial Marines is actually a full video game and not an early alpha. The sheer range of mediocrity that makes up Colonial Marines is only eclipsed by its slipshod development process. Oh well, at least the AVP franchise can rest easy since it's no longer the worst possible piece of Aliens media. Jurassic Park Trespasser. It's kind of sad how much effort went into Jurassic Park Trespasser, especially with regards to the real-time physics and animations that were procedurally generated and lack of a traditional HUD. However, numerous delays saw the final product lacking many of these features. The general degree of polish was pretty lackluster, with bugs galore and horrible system requirements. Jurassic Park Trespasser was quickly forgotten, serving as a reminder for what could have been. Fight Club. Insert cliche here about how you don't talk about the Fight Club video game, yada yada yada. Released in 2004 and based on the movie, Fight Club challenges you to actually win the game. Remember all of that anti-consumerist themes in the film and book? Yeah, forget about all of that with this horribly rendered fighting game with awful animations and short playtime. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at GamingBolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.